So please welcome Andrew from Density. This is going to be fascinating for you guys. Now, you were at the Launch Festival, our larger event, just in February, correct?
Correct.
And you got quite a response there for this product, and we're going to see a little bit more of it. Let's just show people what you're doing.
Sure. So I guess to answer the question.
Is his microphone on? Let's check one more time. Can you hear him in the back?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. So just to, I guess, answer the question you've asked everyone else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, one sentence, your business.
Yeah, so we measure foot traffic to and from local businesses or local merchants. And so we built a device. It's really sleek looking. It's a Raspberry Pi and 2 antennae. And when you plug it into a wall, it will immediately count the number of people in a room, like this one. Those of you, and because you're here, you're probably already familiar with Wi-Fi tracking or MAC address tracking, and that's what this does. There's actually a really interesting thing to talk about in MAC address tracking. So that was version 1.
And just so people understand MAC address tracking, when you have your phone in Wi-Fi mode,
yeah,
it is looking for lists of routers. Even if you don't connect to the router, it knows you're looking, and it knows your physical address of your phone. It doesn't know anything else about your phone, but it does know that you're in the building.
Yeah, it's unique to your phone. It doesn't know that it's Jason, but it knows that a unique individual has arrived. And what's cool about that is when it's installed in mass or in a concentration of area, a dense area, you end up with really interesting referral traffic. So being able to see, your 20% of the people that go to this cafe also go to this particular restaurant.
Do you also know if it's what type of phone it is, or you just know the MAC address?
You know Android or iPhone. You can pull the manufacturer, which is actually how we blacklist if you're like an HP printer or something like that.
So if I come into a cafe with my HP printer under my arm, you're not going to have a bad read.
Right.
But if I do come in with both my phones, and I do carry 2 typically, you will count me as twice.
Well, not really. So yes, but you also ship with that probe request, with your MAC address, previous SSIDs, so networks that you were a part of. And so if 2 phones share
my home network or my work network, you could say, hey.
We can say this is probably the same person.
Got it. And then this is the 2.0?
Yeah, so this is actually becoming kind of an industry standard. This is what Euclid Analytics uses, and Turnstile Solutions, and a handful of others. It's by a company called Open Mesh, and it's really cool because when you plug it into a router, you can immediately extend that network by adding other devices. Here's the problem. Mac or Apple got rid of the ability to identify Jason's phone or my phone or somebody else's phone by randomizing the MAC address when it sends out a probe request. Now this is something that'll come into play in iOS 8, so we won't really
How often are they randomizing it? Is it like every second or every day? Or?
We actually don't know, which is why we're no longer going to rely on this. So I'm actually going to kill a product on stage, if you're all right with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
So it might be every day it gets a new MAC address. It might be every 30 days. It also might be every probe request. And we don't want to bet on something that might potentially become every probe request. Because if it is,
Apple's doing this because they know that people are looking at these probe requests and identifying people by them.
Yeah. The consumer privacy thing is a big enough issue that they've decided to kill that.
Okay, so let's look at the application of this, because I know that's sort of the most interesting part. And you guys are from Albany or Syracuse? Where are you guys from?
We're from Syracuse, New York.
Yeah.
There are a couple other people here. But this is spun out of a company called Rounded.
Okay, we'll pull up your iPhone, please. Give it 1 second while it connects.
So, okay, so this is a hotel, the Genesee Grand. And you can see at the top is actually a real-time count. And if we jump over into a different location like Empire Brewery, that data will change. This is a master application, so you don't actually get to see, as Empire Brewery, everybody else's information. But what's cool about this is we can track visitation over time. And because we can track visitation over time, we can also start to do predictive analytics. So our goal was to, well, the reason we did this was because we assumed that local merchants were connected. They just didn't know it. Or if they did know it, they didn't have data to support it. So we wanted to be able to see the relationships between multiple merchants, and this kind of allows us to do that. New versus loyal this week. activity.
And new versus loyal is done because if you had the MAC address and I had been to the cafe,
right?
Oh, this brewery, in fact.
So this part is actually now dead.
Yeah. And the activity for the week. So for a small business owner, this is incredible to actually know how many unique people came into the place without having somebody with a clicker.
Yeah.
And in your estimation in Syracuse, is it 7 out of 10 people, 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10?
8 out of 10. What?
Have a phone and a MAC address?
Oh, we actually were in Barclays, the Barclays Center here in New York. And so we explored enterprise for a little while, and we were getting greater than 70% of people with their Wi-Fi on. So we were getting a lot of uniques, and we knew that because they shared with us the number of scans they had with their tickets. So, it's a huge number.
So this number might be 30% greater.
Yeah, I mean, we're within 5. When you're talking 32, you're pretty close.
And so how is this being used by the person who owns, you know, Urban Life or whatever it is in your beta test?
Well, so we actually have a guy who owns a cafe, 3 cafes, and he was going to take a device and put it into a food truck and start selling coffee, and then measure the loyalty, so the number of repeat customers that he got when he went out to the food truck and sold from that to his other locations, and then based on those numbers would determine whether or not to open a new shop, which is just awesome. I mean, it's just data that he never would have had otherwise.
So he puts the coffee truck outside of Barclays Center and says, I wonder if people would buy here.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
how many of those my customers were there.
Right. How many do I already have?
Wow. So that's spectacular.
Yeah, but we can't do that now because the MAC addresses have been sort of shot.
So where does that leave your business when a sort of seismic change like that occurs?
Well,
because you still know how many people are there. You just don't have you lose repeat visitors, but you have everything else.
Yeah, you do have everything else. We think that Paul Graham said, don't differentiate on hardware. Hardware inevitably becomes a commodity unless you're Apple. Differentiate on software. So we don't really care whether or not we're using MAC address tracking or we're using door counters or something else, but we don't want to invade privacy. We really want to be useful to consumers. We want to be useful to local merchants, which we think is an underserved market. And so where that leaves us, we think, and we've been working on something for a little while, kind of quietly, and we didn't announce it at the launch festival, but I'll show you what we're working on here. We think that if you're going to take data and monetize data from consumers, you need to be useful to them. And if you're not useful to them, they have no incentive to let you continue taking their data, like all of us. So,
yeah, because this data is for the
merchant.
It's not like I know there's 35 people in that cafe. I should go there or not based on what I'm looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
So we built this, and this is the consumer application. It's a real-time count where we're using the same data that we derive from the sensors, whatever sensors we're using, that we were giving to a merchant. And it's now real-time data about your favorite restaurants or cafes in an area relative to where you are. And what's cool about this is we do the reverse of threshold pricing in this. So like Empire Brewery, you can see is calm, and it's only 13% capacity at the moment.
I like that you use calm, not empty.
Yeah.
It's chill.
It's chill.
Right. It's not depressingly empty. It's chill.
Right. We're just,
It's cool. It's calm. You can come in. You can spread out.
It's laid back.
I love it.
So because it's laid back, we figure we want to incentivize demand for, Empire's awesome beers, and so we encourage the merchant to do a discount when it drops below a certain threshold, which is really kind of beneficial for everybody. I mean, the demand for local merchants is crazy. There's these giant peaks during certain hours and then these huge valleys. And so if we can help even out that demand by encouraging people to show up, I guess this one expires in 34 minutes and 23 seconds, then you end up with, sort of everyone benefiting. I get 20% off my drink, and they get people showing up when it's normally quiet.
So Al's Wine and Whiskey is 80% full. It's alive. No need to give it a little yellow bar at the end.
Sure.
What if I have 0 and it's completely depressing?
Well, yeah.
What do I do then?
If you have 0, I mean, in that case,
I'm buying 10 phones and keeping 10 phones in the place.
Yeah.
I'm going to hack it as the business owner.
Well, so we don't want to hurt a merchant. In which case we would probably drop off the count, so we wouldn't necessarily show how many people are there. Mm-hmm. But we might just also say that it's calm. We also might remove the percentage, but you know, the purpose really isn't to say, here's this voyeuristic look into a business and then, you know, to use that in a malicious way. It's really just to, you know, this is your city, and we would love to be able to measure the heartbeat of that city. So anyway,
how many people, I'm wondering, if this existed for, you know, your town, would look at this and consult it before going out at night to a restaurant? See, like, I would totally do that. Look at that. It's almost everybody.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's
cool.
like, it's sort of like this is the promise of Foursquare or Swarm.
Yeah.
But, you know, those things require, you know, you can start to extrapolate, but like some places, you know, the Ace Hotel, everybody's checking in on Foursquare because it's all internet geeks. And then you know, like the W Hotel, it's all not internet geeks, so, you know, they're not checking in on Foursquare.
Yeah, yeah, and there's, because we can do predictive with a merchant, we can also do predictive with consumer. So you can see how busy it will get in an hour or 2 hours, which is really, really exciting. Because then as you sort of like move past maybe 6:22, it might kick off a different deal, or it might kick off other interesting information. So that's really exciting to us. I mean, eventually we'd really like to be able to, you can see sort of like the pulsing circle. We'd really like to be able to essentially do this for all locations in a city, all locations that people seem to care about. And that's a really important part, how much someone cares about it, because we're trying to encourage consumers who use the application to help us distribute it. So if there's a location that you really like, you can either filter and search for it, or you can find it nearby and simply swipe to request it. And then we spam the business, of course, to
we have 17 people who want you to put this in. Now, I noticed when you showed the heat map there before for that one block, you have a bunch of dots there. You could also get people on the street just walking by. So if this was the 3rd Street Promenade, you know, in Santa Monica, you could actually do a heat map of like how many people are in each block.
Yeah, so because we're getting rid of because we're no longer using this device, we probably won't be picking up people who don't enter the actual business. So we're replacing it with a small wireless door counter that will, in effect, do the exact same thing and actually eliminate all the privacy concerns. But what's cool is we would like to also be able to predict movement on a map, you know, at a larger scale. So.
Oh, so you want to use a door counter in and out?
Yeah.
Instead of doing the Wi-Fi. Why not do both and try to normalize it?
Well, I'm not terribly against doing both. I guess what I don't want to bet on is a technology that we're going to have to support that's ultimately going to be phased out, or just simply.
Oh, do you see a day coming when the routers won't be able to collect that information?
Well, if I randomize the probe request every time I send a probe request, or if Apple does that, I mean.
Oh, you get the wrong number of people.
Then you get 425 people in a place that only has capacity for 100.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big bummer, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's okay because we really are only interested in the real-time count in this particular case, and because we get real-time count and a really precise one, because people are walking in and out, we're able to derive all sorts of interesting.
So now you got to pivot the startup to the Wi-Fi hardware to just being able to read people coming in and out with like visual. Some sort of visual.
Well, so we actually will use a base station much like this, and this will sort of be the central brain, and then that wireless door counter will talk to it and send up the data to us. So, in effect, actually, in the merchant application, all of this will remain the same.
But will it be counting the Wi-Fi connections as you walk through?
No, just you walking past. Infrared.
Infrared. Wow.
Yeah. Just you.
Okay, so it slightly changes the business, but not terribly.
Yeah, but we get 100% of the people now. We get children, we get, you know.
People without phones.
People without phones.
People with Wi-Fi turned off to save battery.
Yeah.
Great. So questions from the audience and thoughts? Okay, we have one here, and then one all the way at the other side, and then one in the middle.
Oh, I should also say, if you would like to get access to the application or try it out, you can just go to density.io and kind of sign up. We'll send you guys a note.
When you consider that all you need to do is identify uniques, surely it must be possible to use some kind of camera?
Yeah. I think it's a question of the trade-off with privacy. So whether or not someone is, we've seen pushback from Nordstrom, pushback from what's the coffee shop? Phil's Coffee in California. There are a lot of people that are uncomfortable as soon as you use video surveillance in a way to capture someone's face, or when you're using MAC addresses to identify their phone, even though tracking online. I'm sorry? Body temperature is not bad. I think it's I think we actually might have played around with a heat sensor to pick up on that.
But even if you just take there's all security cameras in every one of these locations we're talking about. Nordstrom's and Phil's has security cameras everywhere, and they're recording those for, probably weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Who knows how long they're storing them for, maybe years.
Yeah.
So why would a counter on the same video camera that is just counting humans even matter?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I think, though, our primary market is local merchants who, for the most part, don't have some kind of uniform video system that we can kind of tap into. The nice thing, though, about this is that we can now kind of extend we're not doing competitive data any longer, so if Starbucks wanted to be a part of that list, they can be. We won't be showing Starbucks data about the local cafe that doesn't want them to know,
Got it. Okay, let's take another question here.
Hi. So if you don't mind, do you mind expanding on your revenue model?
Sure. The device is free, and we charge $50 a month for access. This is to the merchant for access to the data. Since we're only about 100 days old, we're pretty much giving them out for free to sort of early users or early merchants. But the model is, this is going to cost you the same amount as 2 meals. We're trying to make it as cheap as possible. We think we can save something like $200 or $300 a month in employee costs alone, in staffing costs alone, just understanding where your peaks are and where your valleys are, as well as evening out the demand.
Another question from our Twitter. Thanks, Garrett. How big is the Density team? How are you doing biz dev? Where are you at as a company?
So like I said, we're about 100 days old. Density was actually spun out of an organization called Rounded. And Rounded is a consultancy. It's been around for about 3 years. We build custom software. And we did that specifically so that we could experiment with technology like this until we found something with viability and spin it off as a separate organization. So the team that's focusing on Density is 4 full-time. And then the sort of the reserve team that remains at Rounded and continues to operate the agency is an additional 4 or 5. So
Great. Let's take another question.
You're getting a lot of data from all of these different merchants. If you realize your dream of having all of the places that you're tracking, how many people, what's your kind of like your software roadmap? What kind of opportunities are there to really understand how many people are going to what shops and when?
Well, I think that there is tremendous value in opening this data set up to other people who want to build on top of it. There are a number of different applications that I think would be really interesting, and some of them we'll tackle ourselves internally. But the ultimate goal is if we have the entirety of Southern California and have this amazing data set about movement in that particular area of the country, there's no reason why that shouldn't be used for urban planning or shouldn't be used for to stimulate commerce or to reward people for loyalty. There's all sorts of really fun things that I think we can do with that.
Do cities know in general like where everybody is in real time? Do they extrapolate that from like say video cameras without looking at them but actually saying there's 100 people here, there's 200 people here, there's 50 people here?
Yeah. There's actually some interesting initiatives around this. One is called Placed. It's a startup. I know that Tony Shea in Vegas is actually doing a really big push with Wi-Fi tracking on street lamps.
So he just wants to know how many people are walking around the downtown project.
Yeah, I mean, that one particularly is, I think, an investment from, like, Las Vegas, not from, like, a startup or anything like that. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a burgeoning field. I think it's the reason we're all here is that this data is kind of being lost at the moment. I know that Chicago has Bluetooth. They're adding Bluetooth to lights. But
they're adding Bluetooth to lights to know just how many people are around.
I think they're actually doing it so they can understand like atmospheric conditions. So they have sensors in there that'll tell them like humidity and tell them pollution. And they also they just happened to sort of throw in Bluetooth so that they could eventually do something with it. So
fascinating. See, I think that's another home run for the company is to just have a city say, we just need to know the density of a city.
Yeah.
And each block by block what the density is. And I'm trying to think of if there's a valid concern, like, oh my God, terrorists are going to come because that block has a lot of people. I mean, it's kind of obvious that there's a lot of people on certain blocks. Mm-hmm. I think we've kind of understand that.
Yeah, I mean, someone recently on our team suggested this would be really cool if a firefighter could see how many people are in a building.
That's actually very interesting. My brother's a firefighter and he's here. Like, yeah, you could actually know.
There are roughly 200 and some odd people in this particular
or 200 phones, or how many people came in and out, or whatever it is.
Sure.
Yeah, the density of the building is phenomenal, especially actually because he worked in areas where there might be 8 people living in bunk beds in an apartment, you know, who are immigrants or whatever, and they're over capacity in the apartment, but they're paying like per bed, kind of a situation in Sunset Park where when they run into a building, sometimes they get a big surprise at the number of people who are in it.
Yeah.
They had no idea, like, you know, these 10 apartments have 8 people in each, and there's 80 people, not 20.
Over capacity or...
Way over capacity, like, Awesome. Well, let's hear it for Andrew from Density. Very well done.